Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 112, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Walter Grandez. Walter, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Ben, for having me. I'm excited to be your 112. Looking forward to this.
Awesome, mate. And another newly appointed practitioner. I feel like the last few episodes, I think the last 5 episodes or so, back from Dave Tenney to Nicole in the last podcast, everyone's landing new jobs. So congratulations on the new role. Academy S&C coach at Philadelphia.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited to get started. I know it makes me really happy that that a lot of us, are finding new roles, new opportunities during this pandemic, because it's not going anyway anytime soon. I mean, I know you guys are going through your next lockdown currently, and I felt like we have never left it out here in the States. So it's nice, and it makes me really genuinely happy to know that like other people, out there are getting new roles.
Yeah, definitely. And it is great to see so many top practitioners landing new roles. I think that's fantastic. And let's just jump in, because I've just mentioned the role that you're going to go into, but let's take you back now. So do you want to just take us through back to like your education and then previous roles that have led you up to this new role?
Yeah. Man, I've had a zigzag life throughout the last 4-5 years. So just to kind of completely backtrack on the education component, I graduated with my bachelor's of kinesiology with an emphasis in applied fitness at Cal State Northridge out here in Los Angeles. Came in as a transfer student from community college. Originally thought I wanted to do nursing. Then that kind of led like, I wanted to do sports medicine, go into athletic training. But after my first internship, I kind of, just fell in love with strength and conditioning. And that just kind of led me down this rabbit hole of S&C. My first ever exposure to S&C was during my undergrad. The last year, I got an internship with Exos. If anybody's familiar with that, so it's Athletes Performance. It was out in Los Angeles, which was a great opportunity, first time exposure just to being around athletes from all age groups. I mean, we had like from youth to high school, college, to pro soccer players, football players, American football players. It was a great experience. I got to connect with a lot of colleagues there that I'm still friends with today, which is kind of nice to see that we're all progressing in this field. That was about 4 months. Then after my stint with Exos, came back and I finished my undergrad, graduated, then decided I wanted to do collegiate strength and conditioning. So what better place to do it at my alma mater at Cal State Northridge. So literally was an intern for about 3 weeks. And then I got like promoted, which was crazy. I had my CSCS. It was an experience. Like I thought like, oh my God, like I've made it. Like I can call it kind of in a way quits. Like, I don't like, this is it. Like I'm at my school. The reason why I got that opportunity was the director had left to take another opportunity elsewhere. So there was somebody that needs to kind of take over the weight room and help lead the 19 teams that we had. And I was the only guy with the CSCS, the only intern with the CSCS. So an opportunity presented itself. So boom, I was there for about 1.5 years. I will be honest, I made a lot of mistakes, like plenty of mistakes, because I was a young coach. I mean, I was like 2 months having my certification, freshly out of college. So I literally thought like, hey, like whatever I learned in school, and from even my internship before, like it will prepare me for this, but it didn't. So that was a harsh reality that I faced, where like nobody taught me how to, speak to sport coaches or administration. So it was a learning curve for myself. But I ultimately made the really big decision to leave that paid position to go intern and continue to learn at another place. And, a lot of people would think that I'm crazy for doing that. But just, I wanted more. I knew I wasn't ready yet. So I left that position to go intern at a big school at the University of Southern California. I worked both football and American football and their Olympic programs. So I had really long days. My days started at 5, got in the weight room at 6, helped with football until 11, 12 p.m., took a break, and then worked with the Olympic sports. And I wouldn't leave like until 5, 6 p.m. Then I would go work at a job at a local gym as a locker room attendant to kind of stay afloat. So yeah, that was a little bit my path then. That was fall of 2018. I also started my master's program. So I did that online. I thought that was beneficial for me since I was already in the field. I would have loved to do a GA position, but I say, look, I'm already in the field. I'm already kind of working. Like I'm already involved. So why not just do it online? So I did my program at AT Still University. I did a master's in kinesiology with an emphasis of sports conditioning and orthopedic rehab. I guess just a little bit me still tied to that I like sports medicine, and I want to find a way to kind of better, become a better practitioner in that sense. But yeah, after at USC, I got an opportunity to go do a professional paid internship at the Olympic Training Center for Team USA. So again, this getting out of my comfort zone, literally moved out of sunny Los Angeles to the cold mountains of Colorado Springs, Colorado. With their 6 months, great experience. It literally taught me how to work in high performance. And there was a lot of expectations because everybody was getting ready for sadly, what was supposed to be the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. So I credit a lot of, me adapting and learning a lot to that organization. I learned under a lot of great coaches there. Brandon Cycle, Brandon Stone, Sam Gardner, who was the head of Paralympic sports. That was my favorite group to work with all the Paralympic athletes. But once I was down there, I knew that ultimately I wanted to come into soccer, football. I just had to find the experience that I was lacking, and that was working with GPS, working kind of somewhat of an exposure also to sports science. I felt like a lot of, starting entry roles in soccer here in the States, like they were almost require you to have that experience in GPS. But how can you get that experience without it seems like you need to be at a club or an organization that has that kind of money to have that kind of technology. So the great thing that I networked a lot at the Olympic Training Center, and it kind of led me to USA Rugby 7. So I reached out to the head strength coach, and he told me, look, I will show you all you want to know about using Stat Sports GPS, just to kind of give you that fundamental knowledge, and also how to create reports and how to deliver them to coaches. So I was like, yeah, why not? So again, from Colorado, drove all the way down to Chula Vista, so San Diego County in California. I crashed on someone's couch. USA Rugby couldn't pay me, which was fine. I mean, they paid me in food and clothes, so I was taken care of in that sense. I was there for about 2 months. Great experience. It literally taught me what I needed to know for GPS, what to look at, what kind of metrics, even if it was just rugby, but I needed that exposure. And then I got a left call from professional baseball. So the Philadelphia Phillies baseball team reached out to me like, hey, we need help in the Dominican Republic. We need a strength coach, certified coach to help us take care of our academy. Would you be interested? And I had trouble at first saying yes, because I felt like this is going to take me away from soccer, from football, from what I really wanted. But John Hood, who was the head strength coach at the time for USA Rugby Sevens, told me look, if I were to hire you now, I would definitely pick your experience working in a different setting in baseball, because you're open to diversity, to different things, versus a guy just all rugby throughout his life. That's just me. So it was enough of a push for me to say, okay, yes. So literally that weekend, packed my stuff, moved to Florida to get situated for 2 weeks in the team hotel for the Philadelphia Phillies. Basically tell me, their philosophy, their expectations, and literally ship me out to another country in the Caribbean. So wow, what an experience that was. I was there for 5 6 months. I mean, in another country. I do speak Spanish, but those who don't know Spanish in like the Dominican Republic is a lot different. It's fast. There's a lot of slang. So a lot of times I'm kind of like, wait, what? And then the kids would like joke with me. I'm like, oh, I thought you knew Spanish. I'm like, yeah, but I like you're fast. Like slow it down. So it was a great experience, and also to be around those kids who baseball is their way of life. These kids don't know how to move. They don't know their bodies, so a lot of times it was just the education, and I love that so much. And I'm like, this is what I want to continue to do. I would love to do this in soccer, but if it happens, it happens. But yeah, my contract ended with the Phillies. It was an emergency contract. Unfortunately, they couldn't keep me on for the next season, but that was okay because then it led me for the opportunity to work with the LA Galaxy. So I credit that to Adam Watterson. We've always kept contact throughout 2019. Adam is the head strength coach for the LA Galaxy. Adam brought me in, essentially, to kind of start with something new with the Academy. He literally gave me a blank canvas to kind of paint around. The club has had some models before, but not a definitive long-term athletic development model. So it was kind of nice to start something there, and then that was never there before, do assessments for growth and maturation. So it was a great experience. Unfortunately, I did have to leave the club, and that was because of COVID. So, everybody was affected by COVID. So ultimately, I was laid off from the club. And then that was around the beginning of June. So from then on, I've just been doing a lot of stuff on my own, trying to, prepare myself for the next role, which ultimately it led to this one, which another, really big club who's passionate about long-term athletic development. And that's, the Philadelphia Union. So that's kind of the sum up of the last 4 years of my life.
Brilliant. And there's loads of things we can go into with this. But one thing I wanted to start with was that you've talked about all the opportunities and areas or sports that you've ended up in. Now, that's no fluke. I know that's no fluke. And when I speak to different practitioners, there's a couple of words that come up and spring to mind that practitioners that get opportunities: tenacity, bravery. There's a lot of different commonalities between people like yourself, and we've talked about Evie before we started recording, that I know you know well. So it's so important, isn't it? And I think that's one lesson that some of the listeners can take away straight away, especially people that are possibly starting out on their coaching journey, is that these are key skills, and they're not skills that you're going to learn in a textbook or on a coaching course, but you have to do this to some degree, don't you? You have to be willing to put yourself out there to create these opportunities.
Oh yeah, 100%. You have to put yourself out there. Be open to be vulnerable. I mean, I know I was, because the harsh reality was that I've been told plenty of times throughout this journey that, one, I'm too old for this. Because sadly, I mean, I started this path really late. And I'm always honest with it at the age that I started this, but I started when I was 26, 27. I found my calling. I knew what I wanted to do. Yes, I started late. I was told that this is a young coach's game. But, I didn't listen to that, because ultimately the only person who told me I can't do this and no is myself. So that was the battle, because there were days where I'm like, not that I knew I couldn't do it, but I'm like, man, if I only had started earlier. And because I've always had the same ambition throughout this whole journey. I just like, man, I kicked myself in the butt. If I only started earlier, but then I have to, put myself in check that, like, no, I shouldn't think like that, and have regrets, because it literally led me to this path, this special path that has made me the practitioner I am today. Yes, I started late, but you know what? It's okay. So anything, like I tell a lot of coaches, like, look, if you're 30, 29, if you want to start coaching, get into this path, it's possible. It really is. Yes, that might be a little bit tougher, but look, if you have the tenacity, you have the hunger, you have the ambition, you literally can get there as soon as possible. Just, you got to put your mind to it.
Yeah, I think there's positives and negatives to being younger and then having more life experience, though, isn't there? Because You've been through different roles, you've had different experiences, but and 26 is no age, by the way. Like we're not talking, we're talking like you're 50, 60 years old. That's not the case at all. But I know exactly what you mean. That a lot of people will be pushing people towards going straight through university and then ending up in a role straight away. But for me, there's positives and negatives to both. Because if you have a few extra years life experience, that's going to benefit you. Even if it's the communication skills or whatever it is that you pick up to work with athletes, there's so many benefits, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. It is because, well, when I was in uni, one of my part-time jobs was working at a hospital. Again, looking for that experience that do I want to go into nursing or into radiology science? So I worked part-time at a hospital, and I was patient transport. So my job was essentially push patients from their bed that, they need to go to OR. I got to push them there, take them from ER to their bed to testing. So that opportunity there and part-time and uni just gave me the experience and the confidence to, to speak to people, to speak to random people and people that I never knew of. And so I was okay. Yeah. When I'm going into a new coaching role or a new organization, I'm not shy, I'm not reserved, because I've allowed myself to be open and vulnerable in other settings.
Yeah, I think we all know coaches or practitioners that are very, very skilled that don't have, and we've talked about this loads, they don't have the communication skills, the soft skills to actually get across what they want to get across. So you working in those settings, in the hospital setting, or there's other practitioners that have worked in different settings before.
Yeah.
It's invaluable, isn't it? We learn different skills.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, and the other thing that you mentioned before, Walter, was the fact that you were talking about going through qualifications and it not preparing you for the roles that you ended up in. But then also you said about going into the Olympic program, and that did prepare you for high performance. So what was the difference, you think, between the two? Because I'm trying to think now, young coaches listening that are going through any sort of qualifications, what do you think, where would you point out? What are the areas that they need to possibly gain extra experience and really focus on getting certain skills from?
Yeah. The big thing, I mean, as you mentioned, the soft skills, I think that is extremely important. Again, don't neglect the hard skills. I mean, your certification just gives you the bare minimum to practice S&C. So, I mean, and same thing goes with your university, what you learn there. But I'll be honest, I know a lot smarter coaches than me. There's smarter coaches than me, but they have trouble delivering that message to their athletes, to other practitioners, to administration, or other people in the organization. Because that's a skill set that you have to learn. You have to keep practicing. So I credit the Olympic Training Center because there's high expectations. They don't treat you as just an intern. Go clean weights, go do this, this, and this. No, you're actually on the floor day one. The second I walked into the weight room, they're like, go coach. And I'm like, okay, cool, you can coach. Here is your team. Here is para triathlon. Here is para judo. So they literally give you that stuff. I'm like, okay, cool, contact the coach. They threw me in. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I had to develop my soft skills even more, because again, you're working with the 1%. So they value your opinion, but you're also, you have to know. That was a perfect spot for me to look, I know my stuff, now deliver it. So whereas when I was a young coach at my first job, I did know my stuff, but I didn't know how to deliver it. And then it's just then you kind of get stepped on. I mean, I had quite a few teams, their head coaches were like, Walter, I just don't know anything. I'm like, well, again, I was a little bit shy and reserved because it was my first job, but yeah, the big thing I tell young coaches is that look, of course, don't neglect your hard skills, but this is a business that is 20, it's 80% people skills, and then the rest is what you learned in uni. Again, I mean, don't take into full context that oh my God, I have to neglect what I learned, all the science and et cetera. No, you still have to. It's a big part, but you just have to learn how to communicate that across the board. Put yourself in a position that you're a valuable team member, because that will literally save your job. If you can't do that, then they're going to be like, oh no, we don't need this guy. We'll just, shoo him away.
And then in terms of the hard skills as well, I think a lot of people think that university or the qualifications they've done, they're the be all and end all. We learn it all there, and then we get into actually coaching, and then we just use the information that we've had. But I know you're someone that's constantly learning, constantly sort of testing yourself as a practitioner. So it's a bit of a hard question, but how much do you think of your knowledge that you've built up was from previous qualifications, and how much of it was actually getting involved and, I suppose, learning on the job?
Yeah, you know what? It was not, I wouldn't say 50-50, whereas like, even, but there was definitely a lot of things that, of course, that I learned in uni prepared me, but it also helped me question a lot of the things that I learned. Not saying that my professors were wrong or what I learned in undergrad was wrong, but I think that's healthy and that's normal, because it helps you chase that proverbial rabbit hole to keep wanting more, to keep learning more. So, I mean, same thing went for my master's program. I mean, I learned a lot of new things, especially in on the rehab side. But again, like, it's how can I make that applicable in a team setting? Because that's way different. Like, yes, the old model was they go see their physio, they're with the physio. Physio's like, all right, here's your S&C, and then here, go back to practice. Whereas, like, in the team setting, I learned, like, no, it should be one fully integrated model. Like, the S&C should be with the physio working together. And then as the S&C kind of takes a little bit more of the reins, and physio's kind of in the background helping out, then the sport coach comes in, the skills coach comes in. So that's kind of what I learned at, with the Phillies and their baseball team in the Dominican Republic, and same thing with Galaxy. So that is something that you won't learn really in uni. They just kind of like show you, like, this is what you do, and like it's not applicable yet, because how can you? I mean, unless you're in a program and they kind of then give you a placement, then that's perfect. And that's kind of one of the things that I've seen and I've enjoyed, at least in the UK, that in master's programs, that they put you in a placement program with a team, whereas I don't really see that as much in the States, maybe as a GA, but then again, you have to, like, in a lot of terms, like, it's too much. Like, I mean, you're as a GA here in the States, you're in charge of 4 or 5 teams, whereas maybe in the UK, I mean, you're in charge of a smaller team. So I feel like that's more set up for success for you, versus, I mean, here in the States, where you're a GA and you have like 4 or 5 teams, where it's like it's a lot of load.
I think that's a great point that you made with that when you get into a role, you start questioning things you learn, because I don't see that as a negative at all. There's so many approaches, isn't there? And practitioners are always going to evolve as well. And we only evolve by doing exactly that, by questioning things that we've done before. I listened to a podcast the other day, and I can't even remember who it was with, but they were talking about, if you don't look on 5 years ago, some of your programming or the way you speak or the way you wrote, and get a little bit embarrassed, then you've not progressed. And I think that's fair, isn't it? Like, we have to progress as coaches and sort of question what we did before.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned. I was literally thinking about that this past weekend, like the stuff that I believed in and I did at the start of my sessions, is just, it's drastically changed. I learned to become more adaptable. I mean, one thing, me coming from starting off essentially in the private sector with Exos, the beauty of it in that setting is that you literally have like an hour and 30 with your athlete. Like, you can control it, like the session, the time, and etc. Versus, you're in the college and the professional, like, you don't have 90 minutes with an athlete, like that. You have 30 minutes, 20 minutes. So, like, what can you do? How effective can you be in that time constraint? So that's, again, I had to learn to adapt. But yeah, I kick myself in the butt, like the stuff I used to do, like when I first started in year 1.
I think everyone goes through that, don't they? I think every coach will look back, and everyone that we speak to, they've made mistakes. They'll openly admit they've made mistakes, but you learn, and that's a good thing. The other thing I was going to talk to you about was the lockdown, the quarantine period, but also the period between roles. Because I know you're not someone to sit back and and just relax and put your feet up. I know it's been very productive. So where did your focus go in this time?
Yeah, so the one thing that well, when I was with Galaxy, there was one project that my boss Adam gave me, and that was, hey, create like a management system like for the academy. That's something for us to track, you know, their load, their intensity, from it could be from like, you know, subjective measurements to objective measurements, because we didn't get GPSs for the academy until I was like 3 months in. That was just because the first team was getting new units and they were going to take down our old ones. So yeah, I created something out of Excel. I credit that learning experience a lot to John Life. I reached out to him. He gave me the fundamentals to kind of start on Excel, how to, you know, look at the VBA coding and just how to, you know, essentially write out like, yeah, the formulas to create, you know, your athlete management system on Excel, which it like opened up a whole new world for me. Because if I could be honest, when I was in uni, you know, one of those kind of things on your resume that you put that like, oh, what are you proficient in? And I would lie and put Excel. Oh God, like I would do that just because like, you know, it was a must. But now I can honestly say that I'm, you know what, decent or proficient in Excel. So yeah, that just opened up a whole door for me. Because the reality is that if you're in a club that doesn't have the money to afford, you know, Kitman, I believe it's Kitman Labs or Conduct, these like really nice and fancy like management systems, like your best bet is your Excel. So I spent a good chunk of quarantine just developing my Excel skills even more, building on, you know, just another athlete management system for another club and professional rugby, to building new strength cards, dynamic strength cards, just to make, you know, life easier for other coaches. And I gave the stuff for free because I wanted to open up a conversation with a lot of coaches, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, how can I help? Whereas like, you know, some coaches like, can you actually create something for me? So there, of course, I would, you know, have a set price, like I can create this for you. That was a little bit also my side hustle, but it just opened up this complete world for me that I was also neglecting. And that was having like just a foundation of data literacy, like a little bit of the stats. Just I dove into that because I feel that's something we tend to neglect as strength coaches. Like, yes, the whole strength conditioning, that's the sexy part, the fun part, but like when you do your testing and you look at your progressions, like how do you know your training program is actually being effective? So that's why I started diving a little bit into the stats, a little bit more into the data, because I wanted to hold myself accountable even more for my next role. And I'll be quite honest, because I dove into this, it literally opened up a door for me for my new job. When I interviewed, I showed them what I was working with. This is what I've been doing for quarantine, and they were blown by it. They were like, "Wow, that's amazing!" And literally 2 days later, they're like, "We want to bring you on board." And I was like, "Yes!" And I was actually talking to my new boss, and because he loved the work I was doing, and he's also a data savvy guy, that we want to then now create. It's a thought process, but we want to create a podcast to deliver to coaches, just blending a mix of like that data performance together, where I can then we can offer, you know, introductory to data, like understanding coding, but also like doing like skill sets to better develop your Excel. So that's kind of a thought process we're working on. So yeah, excited where that's going to go. But yeah, that's essentially what I spent my whole quarantine, is just getting better at Excel, opening the world to Python, to R, just to kind of, yeah, build a whole different skill set, in a way, separate myself from other people. And it literally helped out a lot. It's the reason why I want to say I was successful in landing a job, was being open to something new.
I think that's great to hear as well, that you've been so productive in that time, but also that it's paid off. Now I've just seen snapshots of the KPI profile that you've been putting out on LinkedIn and social media. And I'll be completely honest, I'm a complete novice. It goes right over my head, but that is a point, isn't it? That it probably does for quite a few people, and we should understand it better.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. And the data and the information that is in that, in those spreadsheets and everything that you've loaded. I mean, I know a lot of people have reached out to you to get copies of it. So at the end of the podcast, we'll give away some
Yeah.
information for people to reach out to yourself, because I think there'll be plenty interested. But another topic we were going to talk about, Walter, was, and we've talked about this a little bit already, but is complementing, not competing with performance on the pitch. And when I sort of say that phrase, what are some things that jump out to you that we do as S&C or sports science we put into our program just because we've always done it, but it may sort of compete with performance rather than complement it?
Yeah, it's actually a good question. I've been thinking about that a lot, so you kind of gave me the heads up on that. Yeah, actually, can you repeat that again one more time, just for my own clarity?
Yeah, of course. So it's, and I don't expect like there to be, right, there's this, and
Yeah.
this, but it's more of a discussion. But and I think it's quite a nice thing to sort of talk about, is that obviously everything we want to do away from the pitch, we want to complement performance. We want it to complement what we do on the pitch. But there's going to be elements of our preparation, and this is probably some of the mistakes that coaches have made as well along the way, that have competed with it. So it's possibly taken away. So I'll give examples that people that have gone into the gym and possibly done programs for their ego or things that they've seen, and they've just forced into the program rather than looking at the athlete or the player and saying, right, they could do with A, B, and C. That would help them with their performance on the pitch. I think sometimes as practitioners, we already have a program preset, and we don't take that individual into consideration as much as we probably should. Now, that's just an example, but I thought it'd be good to have a discussion around some things that you've possibly seen or even experienced yourself that you feel has competed with performance rather than complemented it.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, because one thing I feel like, I mean, I've actually done in the past that I've never taken the athlete's thoughts and their rituals into consideration. Before, I know in baseball, when I was there, it was kind of a thing that they had like a little ritual, what they did, but we also had like a preparatory, like pregame lift for a lot of our pitchers. It was a great program, but I felt like, we could add what they want. As long as it's not detrimental for for their performance over what they're going to do when they're going to get ready to perform. So I think that's something we kind of neglect, even if it's something that's small. If it makes them feel good, why not add it? But still stay true to your program. I mean, I know when I was in the Galaxy, a lot of my guys had, they like to be in their own realm. We didn't do a lot of pregame lifts just because there was never the time to. But that's just something I, in the past neglected a lot that I would put into their programming. I hope that's an okay answer for you, but that's kind of that's something that I neglected, in the past, just, taking their thoughts into considerations. But again, just being safe about it.
Yeah, and I think back to the podcast I did with Darren Burgess, and Darren brought up a point where he was working at Liverpool with a player, and the player always wanted to do, and I can't remember the distance, but they always wanted to do a run, and they wanted to do a run on the morning of a game. And obviously, as sports scientists or S&C coaches, we're like, well, that's probably not the best thing to do. But the player felt better. They wanted to do it, and they were probably going to do it anyway. If they didn't agree to it, they were probably going to do it anyway. So it was something where Darren talked about on the podcast where he said, listen, I had to accept that. I had to accept they were going to do it anyway. I just kind of had to monitor what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I think he even said, and I might be wrong on this, I think he even said he went with them a few times as well, just to make sure that the distances they were doing wasn't anything too crazy. And obviously, if it has a massive impact on performance, then you can step in. And then you could possibly say, well, should we do this instead of this? But there's things that we do and things that we do in our preparation that may not be 100% textbook. But we have to work and we have to manage that individual and some of the thoughts and needs that they have.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of the chaotic parts of it. Now that I think back to it, I remember there was one athlete when I worked with the Phillies. He was a pitcher, loved doing bicep curls right before game day. Like if he was, even not if he was starting or if he was like a relief pitcher, loved doing some bicep curls. It made him feel good, made his arms feel good. So of course, like I don't want him to like bang out like a bunch of like reps or do a little bit of that eccentric loading with bicep curls for that sweep up. So yeah, I would do it with him, but I'll also kind of change it for him. I would make him balance on one foot or make it into a split stance position where he's like, oh, I'm kind of being challenged differently. Now his load isn't high. He's not going to be focusing so much on the curls. He now has to, tackle another constraint, but he still gets his cookie. Like he still gets his bicep curls and still feels good. So there were times where, yeah, that's how I would change it, or yeah, just do it with them. Athletes love when you do something with them. It's, again, like, as you mentioned it, like you're monitoring their load, but also you're still building that buy-in, that trust that like, hey, this is a coach is cool with this. Like he likes that, like I'm doing this, he understands me. Because yeah, as us, the practitioners, the S&C coaches, like we're with them like almost all the time, more than their actual sport coaches.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing that I suppose comes into this, and this is probably where it does get, there's going to be different views and opinions on this, and I don't know what it's like in the States as much, but over here it's a bit of a contentious topic with private practitioners working with players from a team.
Yeah.
And when it's done well, we talked about this quite a lot of the time. And there's coaches that have been on the podcast that work privately with players and they do it very well. They're constantly in dialogue with the coaches or the team, sinking in with their work. Then great. Then that can work. I think that can work really well, but it can also be done pretty badly, can't it? Like,
yeah.
If players are doing sessions that the clubs don't know they're doing, it might be a big weight session or a speed session or something that looks great on social media and the coach wants to take videos of it and post it, but that load that they're doing isn't being monitored and isn't being registered. So that's when it can really compete with performance, can't it? It's not complementing it. So I don't know what your views and experiences are with that, if there are any, but I think that's one area that we do really need to be wary of.
Yeah, no, I've been on both ends. So I've been, in the college route when I was an assistant, I've worked with, the personal trainer. They've actually been kind enough to reach out to me and tell me like, hey, this is who I'm working. I'm working with one of your athletes. And, just that's great. Luckily, I haven't been in that situation where I haven't had that communication or the lack of communication with their personal trainers. Because when I was with the Galaxy during quarantine, some of our kids, yeah, they would do our program. They loved it, but they would also have, their specific skill keeper, like for the goalkeepers, they would have like someone on the side where they would do extra stuff. And you know what, like for me, a lot of that is the education component, teaching them about like, load, intensity, about their bodies, how that plays into factor for, them at practice, for games. A lot of it is educating them, like, but I've had a good experience so far. Yeah, like I said, on both ends where I've done like personal training and I've done my due diligence to reach out to their strength coach, like, hey, this is what we're doing. For me, if anything, like, they say that like, S&C is, we're here to complement. We're here to complement for them. Now, for me as a personal trainer, I'm here to complement their S&C coach. Like, so like, because again, I've been there in that same situation. So I've never had any negative things about it, just as long as there's communication. Because the reality is that, especially with age groups, look, like, you have to set a limit on who you can talk to. I guess an example would be that like, working the academy, like for an under 12, like I can't really have his private information. Like how I get information out to him is usually by the team manager or the operations manager of the academy, and then that gets sent out to him. So a lot of times, great if I have the parents' contact information, or sometimes, like they have the parents hire their, extra trainer, because again, I can't be around them 24/7. So then that's when we kind of have that communication. But I have heard like horror stories where, there's no communication, and then just athletes just get injured because they're tired, they're fatigued. So, but again, that's when I tell my athletes, I always assume they're going to have a trainer, and that's just me just educating them that that extra load will play a factor, and it could be a deciding factor on why you're not on the selection for the game, because look, you're beat up. Like, that's just stuff that I wasn't able to monitor. Cool. Yeah, they did. If they're honest with me, they gave me an RPE rating. I'm like, cool. That's something. That's better than nothing. I have that kind of RPE, time, and that kind of SRP just to take that into account. But again, like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just all about the communication. But I really don't have an issue with it. Just maybe I'm playing, devil's advocate because I've been on the other side of the spectrum. But again, I've done my due diligence on communicating.
And I think that's the important point. And I think you bring up a great point there for academy coaches in particular, that the education side of what we do is so important, isn't it? But you brought up a great point, and I think this will ring true with a lot of coaches out there, that it's not always, especially at those lower ages, it's not always a case of educating just the player, because the parents have such a big impact on what they're doing day to day. And we face that in the UK, is that, and this is probably going to be a trend more and more over the next coming years, they want extra all the time. They'll take them to a sprint coach. They'll take them to a personal trainer. They'll do because they think it's helping, which you could argue it potentially could do. But if it's just adding work on top of work, we know that's probably not the best thing. So I think you make a great point, is that you're not just educating the player at those ages, especially those younger academy ages. It's got to be the parent and everyone that's going to sort of impact on that player and that child as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's one thing that I enjoyed, with the Galaxy, is that the parents, because they knew of my background, they would come to me with a million questions. And I don't mind if I stayed after practice 20, 30 minutes to talk to the parents, because of course the parents will dictate their kids' lives because they know what's best for them. So yeah, I enjoyed having conversations with the parents, like, hey, this is my professional opinion. This is like, just so that way they hear it from me, the person, with the experience, the degree, the certification, versus, a social media person. I'm like, not to bag on their business, but like, at the end of the day, your son or daughter is in this academy for a reason. I understand you want to do extras to get them to further develop them, but like, again, a lot of times it's the education component, teaching them, the parents and the kids, because that's something that I do a lot, again, with my athletes, is teaching them, educating them so they can make the right decisions. So even if it's, when I'm working with an under 11, I'm teaching them stuff, educating them. But when they get a little bit older, when they can kind of, comprehend a little bit more, I'm introducing sports science to the under 14. So that way it better prepares them when they're in the under 17s, the under 19s, and again, teaches them so they can make the right decisions when they go out, to PE at school, or, if they do go to their extra personal trainer. Like that's essentially how I kind of program even in the weight room. And I credit that to Sam Gardner at the Olympic Training Center. Like, he's like, I'm a fan of a three-week cycle for a program, which I still do a little bit today, which is the first week we teach, the second week we refine, the third week we master. And by master is like, you step away as a coach, let them explore, again, teach them week one, refine them, let them explore. And then 3, they should be mastering it. And then boom, next week we change it up again. So then we're giving them autonomy. So that's kind of, how I still program a lot today.
Brilliant. I really like that. And I was just going to pick up on something that you mentioned as well with parents asking questions. I think that's a good thing. If parents are coming to you and they're unloading a load of questions at you, I think that shows that there's an element of trust there. I think when parents, this is just my opinion, like, call me out, and I'm sure people may disagree, but when parents are quiet and they don't speak to you as much, I think that's when they're probably making their own decisions on things,
Yeah.
which could go one way or the other. So I think, in my personal opinion, and working with academy players, I think that's a good thing when parents start asking questions.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with you that, like, if they're quiet and they're not saying anything, yeah, then that's kind of, they're making their own decisions. But again, that was, me working in the academy setting with Galaxy, like, I enjoyed when they came to me, but even then I like putting out information out to the parents, if it's via email. Like, I would send it out to the team manager. I'm like, hey, can you put this out an email blast? Like, just, tips on how to recover from, after a post game. Like, just, yeah, I feel like I should be doing my due diligence to reach out to those parents that are quiet. Yeah, that's kind of my approach. For quiet parents.
Awesome. And we'll move it on, Walter, to some quick fire questions.
Yeah.
And I always say quick fire, but don't worry if you go into a bit of detail on these, because they're not all too quick fire. But the first one, which I know is tough for a lot of people, but who have been some of the biggest influences on your career?
Yeah, biggest influence, I'm going to say the whole entire staff at the University of Southern California, the whole strength and conditioning staff. I say that because every individual coach, from the director to the head coach, strength coach for football, they've all played a role to shape me for who I am. I always credit that internship program. If I always tell, like, a young coach, if you have the opportunity to go intern at USC, I would do that. They're just phenomenal, great people. Like, it's an internship program that, there's a thing that, like, with even in American football, like, oh, you're not going to coach, you're just going to go clean weights, you're going to go change weights. Like, no, that wasn't the case at USC. You actually coach. They care about your education. So they helped shape, who I am today. Individually, I credit, my big mentor is, Sam Gardner at the Olympic Training Center, who's the head of Paralympic S&C. He just a phenomenal coach, great human being, just always sat down with me. I feel bad at times because, like, I felt like I was taking away his time from his missus, because we just sat down and just, like, shoot the shit so much. But also a guy like, Dan Guzman, who's the head of performance at LAFC. Like, Dan is someone who, like, if I have a moment of crisis, if it comes to this profession, like, I need help, he is the one person I can call and just be like, and he'll answer the call. And him, great mentor. Even my time with the LA Galaxy, Adam Watterson, great practitioner, helped me a lot adjusting to football. Even Will Sparks, the head sports scientist there, he's the one who always pushed me to, like, chase that proverbial rabbit hole of, like, keep asking why, and that way you're kind of you're still developing as a practitioner.
And I know that's always hard for coaches, because I know after you'll be like, oh, I should have named this person.
Yeah.
But, and I realized that. So I know it's a tough one. But
Yeah.
The next one, Walter, what's your biggest strength as a coach?
Just that is actually a tough question. Because I feel like I would say a laundry list. Like, I feel like it's like an interview question for a job. It's just my compassion. Like, it's the reason why I got into this profession. Like, when I started, trying to figure out what I want to do in my life, like, nursing was like in a way a fallback, because I knew I cared about people. I knew I wanted to change people's lives. But when I knew I can do it in this setting, like, and just care for people, help them get to the next level, like, that's what I knew I wanted to do. So the fact that, like, I care, and I care a lot. I could wear my heart on my sleeve a lot. Like, I get that, I get told that a lot. It's just because that's how I grew up. I love my parents. My parents, I want to say they raised me right. They raised me to care. They're hardworking people. So yeah, just, I want to say it's that, like, there's also a lot of stuff that I can continue to learn on. But I want to say, yeah, that's the driving factor. It's the why for me that I get up in the morning, is that I have the ability to go change other people's lives.
Awesome. And then the next one, which I know this is going to be another tough one for you. What's the best bit of CPD you've done recently? So whether it's a webinar, whether it's a certain podcast, or whether it's a certain blog or an article, like,
Yeah.
is there anything that really stands out for you?
Oh man, that was a lot. It's just, there was a
I
lot of
knew this
continuing
one was going to be tough
education.
for you. I knew
Yeah,
it was
this
going to
is
be tough.
okay. It's tough because there was a lot of check boxes I wanted to continue to learn on. One was of course the Excel stuff, like the whole data stuff. So I would continue to look at John Lyne's videos on YouTube for Excel. Adam Virgil, who's another great sports science practitioner, puts up great tutorials. Learned a lot on his stuff. Um, yeah, that's in terms of the Excel stuff. Going a little bit into the coding, a lot of continuing education on that. Data Camp, that was my go-to source. Now, but when it came to everything else, especially since I still wanted to work in football and soccer, you guys, of course, that was massive. I've literally watched all your videos. I'm not lying. Like I've watched all of them because I've had a lot of downtime. I literally sat on my lazy boy with my laptop and I just like plugged away. So yeah, you guys, of course, other places, the Strength Coach Network, Kier's platform, Science for Sport. Yeah, there's just a lot of good resources out there. On YouTube, when we went through the whole, coaches versus COVID, they had that series out, Hawkins Dynamics, like that has all been pretty much my go-to, but also I've been reading books that is outside of S&C, stuff that would make me as a better practitioner. One book that I read was Ultra Learning, and I felt that I would tie that really well to me learning, data, stats, and coding. Another book was Brief, which is a book on how to get straight to the point. That's a really good book when you want to get straight to the point to your coach. It's more of a business book, but I mean you could still relate that to coaching. Like, yeah, you only have like a short amount of time to get your point across. Like, how effective can you get that across? So that book, Brief, like I mentioned, Ultra Learning, and actually, let me see if there was one book I've made a list because a lot of people have reached out to me like, oh, you got to check out this book. I bought this book, but I haven't started yet, but it was Never Split the Difference. So yeah, looking forward to reading that one once I'm finished reading Zonal Marking. I don't know. I got like intrigued by that. So that kind of pulled me away from reading Never Split the Difference.
Awesome, mate. There's loads in there. I really like the sound of Brief. I think business is definitely an area as coaches we can learn a hell of a lot from, isn't it? So even though it's not to do with football or sports science specifically, there's habits and traits that you can take and apply without doubt. The last couple of questions, Walter, this is the same for two different types of people. So what do you think, and this might tie into what your previous answer, but it could be different. What do you think the most important trait is as a coach?
Oh yeah, being open-minded. Like I understand that we have our ways for certain things. You have your philosophy, but what I learned from the sports science coordinator, Kyle Vogt. I always say his last name wrong, but like Kyle at USC, he told me that it's great to have your philosophy because it clearly defines who you are, but be open-minded because your philosophy will change throughout the years, throughout the months, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a key trait. Like, don't get stuck in your old ways. So I feel like there's a lot of coaches that, they're stuck to the old ways because it works, but one day that way will not work. And then you have to be able to adapt. Just be open-minded. I mean, there's a lot of good information out there, but there's also a lot of bad information out there. Also, I mean, yes, be open-minded, but have a sense of filter. Like, use your best judgment. Again, what you learn from university, what you learn through your internships to kind of help you make the right decision. But there's a lot of stuff out there, especially on Twitter. I feel like, heck, there's a lot of argument on Twitter. I signed up for Twitter just recently, there's just a lot of It's just a lot of arguing, and it's funny. Sometimes I will say, like, I'll sit back and I eat my popcorn. I'm like, wow, like that's really mean. Oh wow, that actually person makes sense. But yeah, just be open minded. Like you may never know, like who you're gonna learn your next skill trait. It may not even be in S&C or sports medicine. Like I learned a lot at Galaxy from other departments, even from the kit man, from the groundsman. Like just be open minded to like learn new things.
That ties into exactly what we talked about before, doesn't it? Where looking back
Yeah.
on like 5 years ago, you'd probably be a bit embarrassed to what you put out because everyone should be progressing, and the only way to
Yeah.
progress is exactly that, questioning what we've done previously and then being open minded. So I think that's a great point. And then that same question, so the most important trait, well, if you flip it now and go to a player.
For the player, oh yeah, you know, I want to say it's like a mental trait. Like I feel like yes, we focus a lot, or athletes focus so much on the physicality of their body, which is yes, it's great, but you also have to have a good like a mental skill set, like your psychology, your mental health has to be just important. So don't neglect that. Like as an athlete, if you have to be able to deal with stress. So I would tell my athletes in the past, like, look, be open to meditation, be open to having a moment where you can just close your eyes and give thanks to yourself, have a sense of gratitude, because that that's literally going to save you, because there's going to be a moment in your career where like you're going to deal with a lot of stress. Like if you're going to be working in professional sports, you're at the top one, a lot of people are going to expect you to carry the team, to carry your nation. So keep keep your sanity healthy. Like that's just as important as the whole physical aspects of your body.
I think we can all think of like famous examples of people that have done that well, just dealt with a lot of shit, and
Yeah.
others that haven't, like that have probably fell away because they've not been able to deal with it. So I think that's a great point. This has been awesome, Walter. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah,
Time's
it's been great. Thanks, Ben.
So a massive thank you for coming on and giving up your time, mate. I know it's really busy with you sorting out all your move over to Philadelphia, so I really appreciate you giving up some time.
No, thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Do you just want to give some details for yourself? So if people want to reach out, I think there's going to be quite a few people really interested in the whole Excel and the spreadsheets and all your learning around that. So do you want to give some contacts or however people can reach out to you?
If you, perfect spot is always, LinkedIn, they could always look me up, Walter Grandez. There's only one Walter Grandez, and that's kind of nice. That's just my last name is like really unique. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. It's Walter_Grandez. You can find me also on Instagram if you like, but if you care about like watching like 1,000 photos of my dog, which I take a day, by all means, if you care about that, I'm a dog person. So yeah, so those are the 3 platforms. They want to get a hold of me, if they want to, talk shop, ask about that KPI profile. Again, like I make this stuff for free. So just to kind of open up a conversation for people, help people out, because a lot of people are, they're too scared to admit that they not as proficient on Excel. So why not? I'm here to help. Like that's my purpose.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you again for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch. And I know we're a few weeks away now from you making the trip, but best of luck when you get over to Philadelphia and settling into the new place and everything. And we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. This was fun.
Top man. Thanks, Walter.
Thanks, Ben.